pleasant good evening. I see you chose to join me for another rendition of Handsome Reads, a community curated by me, SKA Obasi. As always, feel free to call me Handsome for short. I'm just serious. On today's episode, we will be kickstarting our journey through the world of Army of Sin. There will be some twists and turns, but I promise to be your guide through it all. So, let's do a collective roll of those shoulders back. Get relaxed, have a sip of water, wine, or a shot of tequila, depending on the type of day you've had, and let us begin. Episode 0 Prologue The Man in the Chocolate Shoes. Plymouth, England, 2 years ago. The path to the park was littered with all manner of brown and yellow leaves. They were moist with dew as the temperature dropped even further on this late autumn evening. To the left of the park stood the gated community with its security booth and quiet aura, all doors closed as neighbors kept to themselves. To the right was the complete opposite. High-rise buildings of the housing complex drew larger the closer one got, and louder too. It was an assault to the senses, this constant blaring of sound as one too many neighbors attempted to play their music at the same time. Clothes hung from hastily constructed lines as tenants had earlier tried to soak up the remaining rays of the sun. At the base of the building, children cheerfully kicked a partially deflated ball on the run in the still, sweet innocence of youth. The young man crushed the leaves beneath his sneakers, arms mimicking the dance moves of Drake's Hotline Bling. He took careful note of the patrons seated in the park that served as a barrier between worlds, the rich and the poor. He softly hummed the lyrics beneath his breath, his own voice not reaching his ears, for music filled the space between them. As the song restarted for probably the 6th time, the wiry teen reached up to pluck the buds out of his ears. Where he was headed, there was no point in making himself a target. Pausing to shove the fistful of headphones into the pocket of his faded denim jeans, he absently kicked off a leaf that was stuck to the side of his shoe before resuming his walk along the path. Hands now buried in the confines of his worn navy blue sweater, he observed the gentleman he approached sitting on the bench. The man looked so out of place, sitting in this park that was dubbed the Balance, caught as it was between worlds. He was dressed in a tailored, three-piece suit devoid of the blazer, which sat neatly folded next to him. A deep, chocolate-brown fedora adorned his head as he turned another page of the newspaper held between his palms. Rounding out the image of this out-of-place stranger was a pair of immaculately shined chocolate shoes, the same deep color as his fedora. Too well put together to be wasting such a fine suit leaning against a rusting bench, the young man thought to himself, drawing level with the stranger. "Good afternoon," the gentleman greeted, lowering the curtain of newspaper in time to beat the young man to the common courtesy. "Good day, sir," the younger of the two replied, slightly put off, as he had assumed that the stranger would have been deeply engrossed in whatever section of the business newspaper he had to have been scouring. Not slowing his stride, the young man drew closer to the final and only bench in the park, which claimed to offer seating. The remaining benches had become involuntary plant pots to the wild, welcoming grass which had shut up between them. He acknowledged its only other occupant with a careful "Good afternoon" as he passed her by. "Nothing good about it," the woman snapped, not looking up from where she held a bottle to the child cradled in her arms. Her hair, a wispy, bleached blonde with a red streak on one side, was unkempt and flowed about her precious bundle, shielding it from the fall of evening. "Sorry," he mumbled, quickly taking the last few strides needed to exit the park and create as much distance from the unfriendly woman as possible. Right before the exit, he hoisted his backpack higher before hunching his shoulders in a futile attempt to appear shorter. "Where you headed, bruv?" Now, before we go further, I am from the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I am not from England. Please forgive my accent. I mean no offense. "Where you headed, bruv?" A drawl came from one of the quartet who loomed out of seemingly nowhere, lounging against the stone wall nearby. The tall young man gave no response, simply picking up his pace, hoping that today was not the day they pushed him around. "Where do you think you're going?" asked the shortest member of the group. "Oi, did you not hear my man's ask you a question?" The young man stopped this time. "Just trying to come up out them pockets is what?" another member said as he pushed off from the wall to intercept the young man's path. "I've got my eye on you these past few weeks, bruv. Where you from? That accent." Offering up a silent prayer that his next response would get him out of a situation that began to look dire as the seconds passed, he replied, "I'm Russian." "What you doing so far away from Mother Russia?" the short one asked in a mock Russian accent of his own, coming to stand in front, looking up at the tall young man. "Them pockets, though. How about it, bruv?" the leader asked, the evening sun catching the ring piercing his left eyebrow. "So, do you boys like finish each other's sentences?" he asked in Russian, smiling at the lack of comprehension on their faces. Each member of the foursome froze. Doubling over, the young man retched as the leader buried his fist into the pit of his stomach. "Got something else to say?" "No, I guess not," the backpacked youth replied in accented English, spitting out what was left of the bile cloying his mouth before wiping it with the back of his hand. "Are we done here?" "Soon as you hand over your wallet," the leader sneered. "Not going to happen," he replied, raising his chin and fists together. The group laughed at his stance as the tallest of the bunch, this one built like a rugby player, spoke up for the first time. "Ain't nobody got time for that, puss." They swarmed him. He felt someone grab his neck in a chokehold before kicking him behind the knee. His body sagged with the blow. Eyes temporarily blinded as his trachea was caught against a muscled forearm. He never felt any of the strikes until the third slide of the knife deep into his midsection, sending a streak of fire he had never felt in his life racing up his left side. He crashed to the concrete, reaching out for a grip of the thug standing before him. Swearing in disgust, the leader leapt back, before ordering one of his mates to grab the wallet. The young man felt rough hands roll him over to his side, the knife still embedded in his stomach, scraping against the concrete as they turned him, hands roughly rustling through the folds of his clothes. Just don't let them get my headphones, he prayed to whoever was listening. Get your pick, Donny, let's move, called a voice above where the youth lay dying. What the hell, Jake? You know the rules, man, Donny groused. To hell with it, he's dead anyway. Bleeding like a stuck pig. Just grab the pick and let's move. The young man's vision became a swarm of white dots as the metal dragged against his nerve endings, coating his favorite sweater with yet another wave of warm, precious lifeblood. Now, as his vision darkened, he saw his attackers disappearing through the gate leading to the housing complex. The sound of faraway footsteps reached where he lay on the precipice of death. Please don't be that woman with her baby, he silently prayed. Don't let her see me like this. Screw it, he thought, drawing a shuddering breath in a last-ditch attempt. Help! The coppery wash of blood choked off his voice as it spilled down his chin. As his eyes clouded over, the last thing he could see was a pair of dark brown chocolate shoes. End of episode. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this episode. This was, of course, the prologue to Army of Sin. Be sure to share it with a friend, invite your partner in for a listening, and I look forward to seeing you for episode 1, Valentine's Day Blues. Until next time, love and light.